Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents That Time I Turned My Farm into a Dungeon, 2, by S.A. Archer. Narrated by Todd Mclaren. Prologue. Lord General Brathnathal Garrett Skyclaw. I'd been thinking about a lot of things over the past few months. Well, to be honest, just one, but it was big. Everything had been so meticulously planned out, with events and schemes spanning decades, finally culminating in this one moment that was now just hours away. There was a great dream on everyone's mind, a free and safe world for all the outcasts that had never known a home before, and it was about to come true, so long as we won this final battle. There wasn't a single hand in Vastalon Keep without a tool, a weapon, or a magic sigil in it today. Towering trolls pushed the impossibly heavy mechanisms of humongous siege weapons. Horrific demons placed hot plates of dark iron directly onto their infernal skin. Cultist knights in dark armor herded minuscule goblins into sacks by the hundreds and loaded them onto trebuchets. Dark elf saboteurs loaded up bottles with black dust from dark-winged pixies to be turned into bombs. Blind dwarves from the darkest recesses of the earth dug tunnels beneath the battlefield to set up supply lines and traps under the enemy forces. The slimy humanoid spawn of eldritch horrors beyond sanity and the stars summoned portals to call upon the writhing tentacles of their forebears. Were-beasts transformed into their hybrid forms, taking on the forms of powerful beast-men as they were fitted with armor of their own, along with the mutated and monstrous animals that had lived here long before any of us. Even the necromancers were putting tools and weapons in the hands of their zombified and skeletal legions, putting the dead to work as much as the living. A part of me was a little jealous of necromancers on days like this. They only had to read from a book and flutter their fingers a bit, and their zombie warriors obeyed them perfectly with a subservient groan and an orderly shamble. No dramatic speeches, no respect needed, just magical commands, and the undead did what they were supposed to without another word. I bet a skeleton warrior wouldn't ever talk back to their necromancer, if only because they didn't have the lungs or voice box to do so. I didn't mean to sound ungrateful for my position. Honestly, I didn't. I only wanted to help out, just like everyone else. My brothers and sisters had settled into their roles perfectly, getting straight to it as soon as they were assigned the job. Our mothers and father were so proud of them. I was just having a little trouble getting comfortable, you know? I mean, I was a general now. It was a big job. I had been put in charge of coordinating the armies of the Coalition of Dungeons against the Alliance of Adventure in the western territories of the continent, and I was doing my best. Against a lot of odds, I held the line against them. But it always felt like I was one botched battle away from total collapse. Those damn adventurers were always so damn aggressive, suicidally so, as if they didn't believe they were actually going to die in a fight. There was no planning for a random fireball from a trigger-happy adventuring wizard in the middle of a goddamn battlefield that wiped out both sides of a fight, or an adventuring warrior trying to pin a dragon to the ground in a wrestling move. They fought like crazy people, and I had to get really creative myself to adjust my tactics on the fly and counter their lunacy. If any of my defensive strategies had failed even once, I couldn't help but feel like we would have lost the Western Front, and we'd be outflanked right now. I was so stressed out I could feel my scales molting off me. I'd just gotten out of the big meeting with all the generals and representatives of the coalition, and all they could talk about was how bad things had gotten. The Alliance had rallied all the city lords and kings of the neighboring countries to join them, effectively putting the whole East under the rule of the adventurers and doubling their forces practically overnight. On top of that, the Palace of the Depths, a sea dungeon that housed the aquatic armies of the Ocean King, had defected to the Alliance, and our navy was crippled from the loss, along with half the ocean between the Alliance and us. Apparently, the adventurers had offered to get the Mer people classified as second-class citizens instead of slaves if they joined up, and the Ocean King was fine to take such an insulting deal. Throughout the whole meeting, I didn't speak once. I couldn't help but think of all the advantages that I could have been offering to counter all of these negatives if I'd just been able to push the Alliance back into the East instead of just holding our territories like we'd done. Maybe the Ocean King wouldn't have been so eager to switch sides if he'd seen how weak the Alliance had become. Maybe the Alliance wouldn't have had time to broker a deal with other nations if I had occupied their warfront more effectively. I felt like such a disappointment to my father. Of course, how could I live up to a legend like him? He was King Marusk, slayer of adventurers, sovereign of the coalition of dungeons, father of monsters, tamer of myths, the dungeon savior, the mithril demon, the lord of the west, the end of heroes, the unbreakable shield, the reaper's blade. Each one of those titles was earned when he did something so mind-bogglingly amazing that people couldn't stop talking about them, and the names sprung up from the legends that followed. He'd never go by any other name than Marusk if it was up to him, but people just couldn't shut up about how great he was, and he never stopped doing things that people couldn't shut up about. He was larger than life by default, and I was his eldest son. You could have imagined the pressure I felt when I had to represent him to all the dungeons of the world as his #1 strategist. If my father was put in the same position, he would have not only held the adventurers off, but pushed those self-righteous assholes so far up the East and into their own assholes that they couldn't have seen anything but shit while we plowed over them in a landslide. But there was only one King Marusk, and he was busy as hell coordinating everything and everyone else in the coalition to make this war even possible. He was forced to put someone in charge, and I must have been the only available person. It made sense, though. I was the first son of Zuthena the Inferno, queen of the reformed cult of flames and powerful dragon, one of the 3 brides of King Marusk. Dragons got more powerful as they aged, but my mother was already as strong as most of the dragons that had joined the coalition, who were at least 1,000 years older than her. She was the daughter of a nasty dragon named Trevenok the Wildfire, another elder dragon thought to be unkillable that she helped slay. Other dragons saw her as a highly desirable mate, but she had happily sworn herself to Marusk long before any of them could make the offer. As a fire half-dragon, and direct result of the union between the mighty King Marusk and powerful dragon Zuthena, I seemed like an equally powerful, dangerous warrior that could lead a critical war effort in its time of need. The coalition of dungeons could put their trust in me through my father's and mother's collective reputation. If only I'd lived up to all of those lofty expectations. I walked the many halls of Vastalon Keep, taking the less trafficked routes through the maze of corridors in the hopes of avoiding everyone as long as possible. With my mithril armored wings curled around me, maybe I could hide my big draconic snout, stark orange scales, and enchanted armor long enough to stay hidden until the battle started. I couldn't bear to look anyone in the eye, especially not my brothers and sisters, and especially not my father. Could anyone have imagined what he must have felt, knowing that this war would be nearly won already instead of the drastic struggle it had become if only his first son had done his job? He always wore an optimistic face around the family and me. But how could he not be harboring a pang of deep guilt at assigning a useless general through nepotism? What were the other dungeon masters thinking right now? Questioning King Marusk's leadership choices if he was going to be allowing blowhards to be leaders simply because they were related to him. But as long as I proved myself worthy on the battlefield, maybe I could scrape away some of the shame I'd heaped upon my family. I just had to get into the mindset of battle. I was good at battle. My skill was part of what made my father choose me as one of his generals in the first place. My mother had taught me some offensive spells that I'd mastered adequately. My stepmother, Tana the Troll War Master, had trained me in all manner of close combat, and my other stepmother, Ayana, the wolf-born master alchemist, had given me several healthy potions to bolster my strength and flight as I've grown. If I could only focus on the battle ahead, then everything else would be overshadowed, and, in the end, maybe my failures wouldn't have mattered. My only two tasks at hand were to focus on the battle and avoid everyone. Avoid any foot soldiers, and my brothers and sisters, and my mothers, and especially my father.
"Hey, Garrett! Garrett, over here!"
Oh, no. I'd almost walked past an opening to another passage, planning to simply keep walking through, then all the way to nowhere in particular, when I'd gotten caught like a rat in a trap. But this shouldn't have happened at all. These hallways were nowhere near the front of the keep where everyone was preparing to fight. I shouldn't have run into a single soul. Even the shadow demon Shaknazath, who roamed the dark corners of the keep as its hidden guard against stealthy intruders, wouldn't have noticed me over here with his attention focused on the vulnerable secret exits and entrances to the keep. As I unfurled my wings to see who was calling me, my nightmares had been realized. Not just one, but 3 people had gathered here to expose me, and I had no means of escaping or masquerading their notice as a fluke. 2 of them were adorned in the tough leather garb of the Beastmasters, watchers of the monstrous animals that had made my father's fortune so early on in his rise to nobility. One was rather short for a half-orc, but still had the hefty build at his shoulders and the mighty underbite, while the other was a grizzled lizard-born, a tube of leathery scales with 2 stocky arms and legs poking out the sides, and a webbed frill crowning his head like a giant iguana was wearing clothes. The 3rd figure was my father. The obsidian-like metals of his armor, like a dozen demonic bat wings curled to protect his every muscle, absorbed light around him to make his presence even darker than before. The skulls of men were shaped into his fists of feet, and the skulls of wyverns were shaped into his pauldrons, all of which he probably could have slain and grafted onto his armor with his bare hands if he wanted to. A long cap of blackest midnight trailed down from his shoulders, dragging along the floor into a pool of darkness. He sat beside the 2 Beastmasters in chairs shaped from the stone of the hallway like clay, probably manifested by Pebbles, the earth spirit that roamed the halls of Vastalon Keep, at his whim. Through the slits of his horned helmet, 2 blood-red eyes glowed and tore through me as they met my gaze. I couldn't avoid him now.
"Get your ass over here, Garrett, my boy."
My father waved me over with a powerful rush of his arm, and I couldn't help but march to his side on the spot.
"Look at this specimen of dragon manhood. Borgonon, Tiberius. Have you met the illustrious Brathnethal Garrett Skyclaw, heroic general of the Western Front and my eldest son? Garrett, these 2 are Borgonon Locke, the lizard-born, and Tiberius Guildworn, the half-orc."
"My Lord General."
The lizard beastmaster spoke for both himself and the half-orc, as both shuffled out of their chairs to get down on one knee.
May I say that it is an honor, a privilege, and a bountiful fortune to meet two prolific figures of the Coalition of Dungeons, let alone on the same day as the greatest war of our time.
The half-orc seemed to struggle, to not faint as much as he was getting a word out.
How? How did he manage to protect the northwestern border from the Alliance like a solid wall of steel, you mean?
Marusk finished the bumbling half-orc sentence for him.
Because he's a goddamn master strategist, that's how. Do you think I would just leave such a task to just anyone? I needed someone who could do the impossible. And could you imagine my luck to have this hunk of a dragon man around?
Father, please. I tried to shuffle back out of the corridor and out of this conversation. You don't have to embellish my achievements for others. We all know how well I did.
You're damn right I do.
My father stood up and wrapped his arm around my opposite shoulder to pull me into a side hug.
This son of a simple farm boy pulled off the impossible defense. I mean, I always knew he could, but to think that he managed to do so without a single inch given. What a legend!
We're eternally grateful for your amazing skills, Lord General.
Borganon the Lizard-born stayed kneeling, his head bowed as he spoke.
I personally have family in a swamp dungeon near there, the Temple of Yoctalum, the World Serpent. That would have been one of the first places those bastard adventurers raided when they broke the line, and you saved them from being wiped off the map. My sister and her brood of hatchlings are safe because of you.
And with a quarter of the forces.
Tiberius, the half-orc, finally spoke a complete thought as he looked up to gawk at me.
You were outnumbered 4-1 in a dozen battles all along that border, and you never lost a single one. Not a single one. You barely lost any troops, while the adventurers lost entire armies. How did you do it?
It's really nothing, honestly. I tried to weasel my way out of my father's tight grip. I should have been more assertive and aggressive with my strategy, but I was afraid of losing what little troops I had. Maybe I could have cut down on the forces they have in this fight if I'd been able to take a single territory. Borganon looked up at me with a steely gaze.
If I may be so bold, Lord General, that's a load of centaur shit. When I heard that King Marusk was assigning a general as young as you, with a fraction of the soldiers the Southeastern Front was having, I was furious with him. I'll admit to blaming nepotism for putting you in such a position, and I nearly stole a hippocampus and rode back home to protect my sister myself. But when I heard that you'd stopped an invasion of adventurers just 20 miles north of the Temple of Yoctalum without losing a single soldier, I knew that my family was in good hands. In this humble lizard's opinion, the king couldn't have picked a better general from history's finest battle strategists, Lord General. I can't thank you enough for keeping my home so safe. They never even got close to touching my ancestral swamp. My nieces and nephews still don't know what an adventurer looks like to this day. That's all you, Lord General.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
My father patted me on the shoulder.
Can you believe that High Priest Chalan didn't want him in charge of the war effort over there?
Wait. High Priest Chalan was against my appointment? I asked. He never said anything to me when I asked him for troops.
That's because he's a passive-aggressive little bitch. But trust me, my spies caught every word he was saying behind our backs.
My father sighed.
In his own words, I was just filling the ranks with my seed in a fool's attempt to boost my own ego. You'd think a man-snake would have a little faith in the guy who wrestled his big serpent god into submission and convinced it not to eat all of his people. Well, my big man here showed him how wrong he was, didn't he, Garrett?
I was trying to make you proud, Father.
Hey, you listen here, Brathnethal Garrett Skyclaw.
The black-armored man grabbed me by both shoulders and locked his red bulbs with my gaze.
I am always proud of you, no matter what the hell you do with your life.
From the first moment I held you in my arms, I've been proud of you.
I'm proud of all my kids and their accomplishments, no matter what they are. Did you know that your brother Rakthar wants to take up unicycling for a circus act when this war is over?
Really? I chuckled. He has terrible balance even for a troll. How does he plan to use a unicycle, let alone ride it along a tightrope?
I can't wait to find out.
King Marask let my shoulders go.
I'm heading to every show that I can catch when he finds a circus he likes. And you better believe your stepmother Tana and I'll be the loudest clappers every time he performs.
I love each and every one of you.
No matter what you do, you can never make me anything but the proudest father in Marlashtia. Never forget that.
He smiled.
That aside, I couldn't be prouder of you for holding the line so well. You were the only person I could trust to make it happen. You know, your mother wanted to take over for you when I made the announcement that you were coordinating the Western troops. Well, I respect the hell out of your mother's strategic mind. The same with your stepmother Tana's destructive talent when she wanted to join the front lines over there to watch out for you. I didn't let either of them go, because I knew they wouldn't be able to get the job done like you could. I had complete faith in you, and you did it. You're amazing, Garrett. I love you, son.
He pulled me in for a hug. Even with our armor in the way, I could feel my father's affection for me melt through everything and seep through the cracks. Of course, my bleeding heart father had to go and have this moment in front of strangers just to embarrass me. Thanks, Father. I couldn't help but tear up a bit as years of grief fell off my shoulders. I love you too.
Wow.
Tiberius wiped a tear away.
I wish my father had been so supportive, instead of throwing me into a pit of wolves every time I talked back to him. My father tried to eat me when I was still an egg,
Borganon commented.
Didn't stop when I hatched either. He still tries to get a nibble when I visit him sometimes.
Why don't you stay a little while?
King Marask sat himself down, pushing me down into a stone seat that was summoned to meet me.
I was just telling these two about how Vastalon Keep was founded from a humble farm my parents and grandparents owned.
Did you get past the part where you met my mother? I asked.
Oh, yeah. And you missed the part where we all gang up to kill your grandfather.
He referenced the death of Trevenok the Wildfire.
But we're far from done. We haven't even got to the part where you were born. But before we come close to that, we have to talk about the shadow demon Shaknazath and the Baron Barumsh. Chapter 1. Baron Barumsh, 19 years ago.
I, Baron Beauregard Buchanan Bartholomew Bensworth Banana Bunch Bacon Barumsh the 17th, sat upon my wooden throne in my luxurious throne room. I looked quite comely as my royal ass splurged upon the red velvety cushions, the goosey down flattened like a pancake under my noble weight. As my jowls rested upon my chin, I stuck my pinky between the rolls of fat to pick out any particles of food that I might have eaten, having felt peckish. My venture into my own face proved unfruitful, and I disappointingly used the same pinky to part the bangs from my face, as to put it in line with the rest of my majestic bowl cut. The colours of my doublet and puffy trousers were just as magnificent as mine, with purples and reds galore in wonderful alternating stripes, and the golden buckles of my shoes were especially shiny today. The tiny little man with his boring brown doublet and his frumpy hat was not nearly as colourful as me, which made me happy, though not happy enough to not yell at him as he approached me. "Squire!" I shouted at the man before me. "Any news from Vastalon yet?"
"No, my lord."
The squire sheepishly bowed before me.
"Nothing yet, but there have been rumours of a fortress nearby."
I pondered the lack of news from Vastalon. "Are you sure Vastalon has yet to send any taxes back to me?"
"We've sent another contingent of tax collectors their way, my lord, as you requested," the squire insisted. "There is still no sign of the town of Vastalon anywhere. As I've told you before, all the buildings and people have vanished and are still gone. However, the fortress—"
"Well, if I'd known that these miscreants would shirk their civic duties to their lord and not pay me any money, I would have never allowed them to sell their land back to me. Well, if the old Vastalon has been taken away, then let a new one replace it. Squire, mark my words." I slammed my royal fist upon the armrest of my throne, as the squire picked up a pen and quill to write down what I would next speak. "I order a new Vastalon to be built upon the land of the old. The town will be named New Vastalon, and it will not be allowed to be sold back to me to avoid paying taxes and disappear into the night, upon penalty of death. And New Vastalon is to begin paying taxes to me immediately when the first building is constructed. Before the first building is constructed, they will pay taxes to me as soon as construction of the new town commences."
"My lord, who will live in New Vastalon?"
the squire asked. "Have the townspeople around here draw lots," I commanded. 100 random people will be chosen to live there from all the townspeople in the kingdom. No one among my subjects will be excluded from the drawing. We will need women and children in this new town, after all, to make for any new subjects to pay their taxes to me in the future."
"My lord, if I may be so bold as to say something," the squire requested.
"Speak."
"If you are to fill the ranks of the new town's population with the people from this one, will you not be getting the same amount of money from their taxes overall?"
The squire spoke his mind freely.
"You will not be gaining new subjects with this new town, and the efforts you make to have a new town built will only cost you in tax revenue. If we had a surplus of townspeople, this would be a perfect solution. But as of now, we are quite comfortable at our size. If we lose 100 people, however, the local economy will suffer tremendously, and your tax revenue will suffer."
I didn't like what I was hearing. "I don't think that's how it works."
"Well, that's unimportant, I suppose," the squire admitted. "What may be important is, before you build your new town, you should investigate the fortress that's been—"
"Don't you dare deign to speak to me of importance, peasant!" I gestured to the nearby archers guarding the room with a wave of my hand. "Shoot him! You may fire when ready."
"What?"
the fool of a squire said with fear in his eyes, backing away slowly from my throne and towards the door.
"My lord, please! I only want to give you the taxes you so richly deserve. You're not actually increasing your tax revenue if you're not gaining more subjects."
The archers shot him with a hail of 3 arrows, ending the squire's life immediately as his blood spilled onto my nice, clean carpet. If he weren't already dead, I'd have had him shot for dirtying my beautiful...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?